Hi, Year 10s, and welcome to this online learning. Hopefully, everything goes okay. You'll be watching this on YouTube or in Microsoft Teams. And in this video, I'm going to go through just a little bit of an overview on this prerequisite learning and also talk about your statistics assignment. Have a look at probably some standard deviation. Now, I think next week, the idea is when everyone sort of started to get their head around the statistics assignment, we're going to go through some of these other things as well. So I'll probably go through standard deviation and so let's get started. Now, with these videos, I think that the best thing to do is be able to watch it before you've actually attended class. It just makes it so much easier. You can ask questions. You've had time to digest the information. That's what I think the best way to use this is. However, if you can't do that and you log into your class time and you come in there, then I think that's also a chance for you to watch a sort of, a 10, 15, 20-minute video and then to ask questions. All right. There is no point until you've actually watched that. It's better to do that as opposed to learning live. I don't think that that's the best idea for mathematics. So we're going to try sort of like a flipped learning approach. Okay, so first of all, what we're going to talk about is let's have a look at the end, and that is your stats investigation. Now, look, it does say here that matches won, matches lost, matches drawn. Absolutely, it's just giving you an idea. But in actual fact, you can have the chance to choose any sport, any player within a sport, and look at their stats. And I want you to, there might be a correlation between certain things, there might not. It's really up to you. It says here 1 to 2 pages. I guess if you've got quite a few diagrams and stuff, it'd probably be more like 2 to 3 pages. And it's going to be June week 2 of term 2. Okay, now quickly, I think the best thing is to look at this rubric. Now it says here, if I was to get full marks, you'd have to show us 6+ types of statistical analysis. So now that doesn't mean to be honest, I would like you to show more than 6, but there's no way you can get full marks if you don't cover at least 6. So in all honesty, if you cover with a bit more analysis and have some linear regression or bivariate, we'll look at that sort of stuff in a moment, then you're more likely to get your high mark or full marks if you do so. If you just pick the minimum 6 and you don't cover it with that much explanation, or as you don't really have a conclusion. So for example, in order to get it, all statistical calculations are explained. Now, for example, if you go and find a 5-figure summary, I want you to explain how to do that and do it by hand. I know that there's some things that we can only sort of do in year 10 with a calculator. We don't sort of expect you to do anything more, but in particular, things such as I know that in your year 9 task you went out in the wildlife and got data, and you had to do things such as your 5-figure summaries, your box plots, mean, median, mode, range, all of those sorts of things. Now, and this is a mini investigation can probably compare to that. Got to make sure your mathematical notation is all correct and that you've ensured that it's accurate. Okay, we don't want a bunch of fluff. Now, let's have a look at some of these analysis. Now, measure a center, mean, median, mode. You should have seen those before. Now, that's considered one thing. So I would absolutely, one of the easiest ways of doing some analysis would be to look at your data and define these. 5-figure summary, which we can then turn into a box plot. I'm going to go through that today. I'm going to show you the standard deviation, which you haven't probably found before, but we're going to talk about. And then we're going to probably look at histogram. And next week, we're going to probably cover these other things as well. Okay, so at the moment, based on what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pick, in this case, a player. I'm going to pick Michael Jordan. And if I pick Michael Jordan, if you just look up Michael Jordan's stats, there you go. The first thing I find is actually, this is very good for basketball. I'm not sure for what sport, whether it's soccer or cricket's another great sport because, you can do histograms and you can do linear regression and you can do all sorts of wonderful things. Okay, Michael Jordan, let's have a look. You can see here, these are all his seasons. I might pick You could look in particular season. He did extremely well in this season where he averaged 37.1 points. So I might look at that season, and I'm going to get his data, and we're going to actually look at his season. Now, I'm just in the interest of this, I might just pick the first 15 games. Okay, so the first 15 games, we're going to pick that out. Okay, and actually look at his points per game. Now you can pick anything. You can pick up assists, or you could try whatever you like. Really, it's up to you. Now, and you don't also have to stick. You could just look, for example, at his average points per game for a number of seasons, and compare them. You could then look within a season. As you really have, it really is up to you. The main thing is those that we want to obviously see you do some statistical analysis and hopefully some further analysis as well, not just the basics. Okay, so let's have a look. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my CAS, and hopefully you've got the trial software. You can get teacher software or just the student trial. And what we want to do is I want to put in, we want to go to home, and whenever you're putting in data, you want to put it in this spreadsheet here. I'm going to give it a name, MJ for Michael Jordan, and then we're going to go down here. I'm going to enter in. So he scored 50 points in his first game, 41, 34. You don't have to do it in any particular order. 41, 34, 33, 39, 34, 28, 48, 40. So I'm just putting this data in. So I'll get you to, you might want to try this on your CAS calculator as we go. 22, 37, 41, 40, 40, and 45. Okay, so there's my 15 pieces of data. Now, of course, if you were doing this, sure, you can do it in the calculator. There's a few things. We can go to menu, and because there's just one thing, which is one variable, points for, we can go to statistics, and we can go to stat calculations, and we want to go to one variable statistics. How many lists? Well, we just want one, and we're going to put it in column B. Press OK. There you go. Now, as it turns out, over here, this here is the mean for those 15 games. So the mean is the average. So the average for 15 games was 38.13 points. Down here, we're going to need these two calculations for standard deviation, and the standard deviation is this one here. So we have just found, now this is one exception. I'm not going to ask you to work out how to, or to show us how they calculated this value. We will allow you to calculate that with a calculator. So there you go. Michael Jordan, for those 15 games, the standard deviation is 7.26. If we actually go down further, we can see there that we've got a minimum, quartile 1, quartile 2, or median, quartile 3, and a maximum. Now, that's actually your 5-figure summary. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 values, and we can turn that into a box plot. Now, by the way, when you turn these things and use this software, the great thing is if I go and press the home button, let's turn this data that we've just got from a 5-figure summary into a box plot. So I click on this value here, and you get your mouse over here, and you actually scroll down, click on a variable, and I'm going to call this MJ for Michael Jordan. Now this is sort of like a dot plot. Let's go to menu, plot type, and then we want to convert it to a box plot. Now, as it turns out, what happens here is, okay, the minimum is 28, the max, we've got a Q1 of 34, we've got a median of 40, and a Q3 of 41, maximum of 50. As it turns out, this 22 is actually an outlier. You can see it's not part of the whisker there. It's actually outside separate. Now what we're going to do is, in order to work out what that is, then what we need to do is we actually need to sort of get this data, and we can organize it. And let's what we've just done is we have just got all of this data, and what we're going to do is with that we can now yes, the CAS calculator has organised this, but what we can do is I actually would like you to do this yourselves, or at least give us an example of doing it. You might not need to do it. You might only have to do it once or twice, but we actually want to see what you're doing, as opposed to just doing everything in the calculator. So when you do this, I want you to organise your data. So if you've got the points, 50, oops, 50, 40, I'm just going to make stuff up, 41, 42, 43, 44, 32, 22, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things. Okay, well, let's just say we've got 8 things. So as it turns out, remember that when we, this is our middle here. So in actual fact, the middle, or the median, is actually the middle of those two numbers here. So our median is actually going to be 42.5. Now, when we're looking at the quartile one, we're looking at the first half, and we're looking at the half of those. So what is a half of these things? Well, a half of these things is, we're looking at in here, halfway between 40 and 41, which is 40.5, and that's quartile one. And over here, the problem is, though, is that one of these things could be an outlier. So we noticed before that 22 was an outlier. So what we could do is we actually can take that out of the data. So that's something that we need to do. And to show you where that is, you'll need to refer to, I'm going to show you, what page are we looking at? Well, we were talking about outliers. So let's go ahead and find that. Okay, so an outlier is marked with a cross, or in our case it was a dot, and it says an outlier is greater than Q3 plus 1.5 times IQR. Now, I understand we've talked about this in class already. You do need to consider the outliers, and you need to be able to use this rule here. So basically, anything less than this range is going to be an outlier, or greater than this range. So I have spoken about that in class, but I'll get you do need to consider outliers when you're doing this. Okay, so now that we've got, so what we've actually got is we've got our box plots, and in order to plot type, and we've got box plot. So we've got our box plots with, in this case, an outlier. This is actually a 5-figure summary, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and of course we also worked out how to actually calculate the standard deviation as well. Now, the standard deviation is sort of like the spread. So, for example, if I was to have some data here, let's talk about the situation at the moment with coronavirus. At the moment, coronavirus, they do not want a bunch of people getting infected in a short amount of time like so. They want to basically spread the curve so that way that the health system can actually handle all of these infections at once. So as you can see, this here is what we call, so this has more spread, so this has a higher standard deviation. Okay, standard deviation. This one has a very low standard deviation. In other words, it's all central around the mean, and it means that, for example, in a very short amount of time, a lot of people might be getting coronavirus in this situation. We hopefully in Australia want to flatten that curve, don't we? So we want to sort of really flatten that curve out over time, and ideally, or maybe even just make it really low, like something like this. So that's sort of that's about sort of stretching it out and having more standard deviation. Now, let me just go back to your rubric. Okay, so you can go anywhere with this. Any sporting team, look at stats. We can look at cricket runs scored. You can look at points for is a good one, or average points. You can be looking at anything you like. We've got students who are doing average disposals per game for AFL. We've got soccer. But you want a good idea though is when we're getting, what we want to be thinking about down here is, well, let's say for example, Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan he actually peaked in I think his third season, but you might actually notice a player's first season. You might decide to go into a player's first season. Let's have a look, 84, 85. And let's see if in his first game, in Michael Jordan's first game, did he, was there sort of, you notice there he only got 16 points, 21 points. In actual fact, if you just look at the 3 games, he sort of went up, in a straight line, I guess, if you talk. But as you can see, the points are very varied, and there's quite a big difference between quite a few of these. So there could be quite a high standard deviation. So I guess what I want you to do is see, you could potentially see if there's an improvement over time. Okay, so you potentially could be looking at, a time series. You could sort of, there you go. It could be a player. This could be a player's performance, and this could be time. So we're going to look at this time series stuff later. Bivariate, linear regression, it's all, a lot of this stuff is all really related to each other. So at the moment, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that I've just covered today, of which you can then gather the stats, talk about it, and you could certainly do a histogram, for example. You can just do it by hand. If I was to go in the calculator, of course, over here, we don't have to do a box plot. Okay, we can actually do plot type. We could do a histogram. And that's actually, as you can see here, we've done it. So there's one occasion where Michael Jordan in this scored 22 points. 22 points over here. So as you can see, the most common thing that he scored was around about 40 points. Okay, so you can actually get these histograms, and if you want, you can actually use your snipping tool, and you could put this into your investigation. Okay, so in there you could have this in your investigation, or alternatively, if you wanted to do it by hand. Anyway, that should be enough to get you started. What I want you to do now is I want you to go, and you need to get some meaningful data. I want you to be able to, you can compare players over the seasons. You could compare a team over the seasons. You can ideally have a think about, well, is there going to be any correlation between, you can even look at bivariate, which is 2 bits of data. Okay, so let's think about like time and points scored. Well, is there a relationship between, time, player, how long they've been playing for, and points scored? I don't know. You can go find these things out. So I'm going to leave you to that, and hopefully this has helped. So that's at 18 minutes. Now what I want you to do is, definitely grab as much data as you can. Start thinking about how you're going to use it. And we've just ticked off 5 things that you could potentially do as far as analysis. And the data is out there. If you Google any bits of sporting data, whether it be softball or cricket or football, AFL, whatever, basketball is a really good one. But of course, I've just picked it out as an example. We all know who Michael Jordan is. You could pick any player within basketball or soccer or anything, and you can actually go ahead and then get some of that data and do something meaningful with it. All right, I'm going to leave you to it. What we're going to do next week, though, is we're going to look at time series, bivariate, each of these individual things within the notes. So make sure that you have your notes out when we're going through the video, and you can sort of pause it at any time. As I suggested as well, these videos, ideally I'd like you to watch them before you come into Microsoft Teams, because that way you can ask questions based on that. If you don't have time, however, then at least then log in when you're supposed to during class, then go and find the video. It could be on Teams, or it could be in your email for YouTube or something like that. Go ahead and then watch it, and then I'll be sitting there waiting for your questions, so you can then go ahead and ask questions in the chat. All right, thanks everyone. I'll speak to you soon.